The wrestling world just witnessed something that nobody saw coming, and if you think you understand what's happening behind the scenes right now, you're about to have your mind completely blown. Paul Heyman, the special counsel to Roman Reigns, the architect of the tribal chief's dominance, just walked into Nick Aldis' office with what he thought was the perfect plan for Survivor Series Wargames. He had every angle covered, every detail mapped out, every piece positioned exactly where he wanted it. And then Nick Aldis, the SmackDown general manager who's quickly proving he's not just another pushover authority figure, did something that sent shockwaves through the entire roster. He looked Paul Heyman dead in the eye and shut him down completely. Before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're diving deep into the kind of backstage drama that changes everything moving forward. What happened wasn't just a disagreement between two personalities. This was a complete dismantling of Paul Heyman's carefully constructed strategy, and the ripple effects are going to change how we view Wargames entirely. Heyman walked into that office with confidence radiating from every step. This is a man who has guided Brock Lesnar through multiple championship reigns. This is the brilliant strategist who transformed Roman Reigns from a struggling babyface into the most dominant champion modern wrestling has ever seen. When Paul Heyman makes a plan, empires rise and legends are born. He doesn't just book matches, he orchestrates moments that define entire eras of wrestling history. Nick Aldis sat across from him, and this is where everything gets interesting. Aldis isn't some corporate yes-man who got handed a general manager position because he looked good in a suit. This is the former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, a man who carried an entire promotion on his shoulders and defended that legendary 10 pounds of gold all over the planet. He's wrestled in packed arenas and empty high school gyms. He's dealt with crooked promoters, backstabbing bookers, and political maneuvering that would make your head spin. When Heyman started laying out his vision for Wargames, Aldis didn't just listen politely and nod along. He saw through every manipulation tactic, every carefully chosen word, every strategic pause designed to make the proposal sound reasonable. Heyman wanted specific superstars on Roman's Wargames team. He had a list of names, all carefully selected for their loyalty to the tribal chief. These weren't just talented wrestlers, they were soldiers who would follow orders without question. Heyman was building a military unit designed to execute his strategy with precision, but it went even further than that. According to people close to the situation, Heyman also wanted influence over who could be selected for the opposing team. Think about the audacity of that request for just a moment. Walking into a general manager's office and demanding not just control over your own team's composition, but veto power over your opponents as well. That's not seeking a competitive advantage, that's attempting to rig the entire match before a single punch gets thrown. Nick Aldis let Heyman finish his entire pitch. He listened to every argument, every statistic, every piece of logic that the wise man presented, and then he delivered a response that nobody expected. He didn't just reject Heyman's proposal, he systematically tore apart every single point. He questioned the fairness of hand-picking team members based on loyalty rather than recent performance. He challenged the entire premise that Paul Heyman should have any say in how Wargames teams get assembled. He made it crystal clear that on SmackDown, there's exactly one person who makes decisions about match compositions, and that person is Nick Aldis. The expression on Paul Heyman's face told you everything you needed to know. For a man whose entire career has been built on never being at a loss for words, on always having the perfect comeback ready, on manipulating every conversation to his advantage, he stood there speechless. The wise man had been outwitted, and the realization was washing over him in real time. This wasn't just a business decision, this was a complete rejection of everything Heyman represents. His value to Roman Reigns, his worth to the bloodline, his entire reputation as the master manipulator, all of it got challenged in that single meeting. What makes this situation even more explosive is what it represents for the entire SmackDown brand. For years, wrestling fans have watched authority figures get bulldozed by top stars. General managers would bend over backward to accommodate whoever held the championship or had the most backstage influence. We've seen endless examples of merit taking a backseat to politics, of deserving wrestlers getting passed over because they didn't have the right person whispering in management's ear. Nick Aldis just declared that era is over. By shutting down Heyman's plan, Aldis sent a message that reverberates through the entire locker room. Past accomplishments don't guarantee special treatment. Championship history doesn't give you the right to dictate terms. If you want to be in Wargames, you need to earn your spot through actual performance in the ring. This decision puts Roman Reigns in a fascinating position. The tribal chief has spent the last 4 years being told yes to practically everything. Yes, you can choose your opponents. Yes, you can determine the stipulations. Yes, you can have whatever you want because you're the draw, you're the champion, you're the head of the table. Roman's entire reign has been about absolute dominance, about being the unquestioned authority not just in matches but in boardrooms and backstage negotiations. Now suddenly his special counsel, the man who's supposed to handle all the political maneuvering, just got completely embarrassed by the general manager. How does Roman respond to that kind of rejection? Does he storm into Aldis's office himself and try to intimidate the general manager into reversing course? Does he go over Aldis's head and appeal directly to Triple H or Nick Khan? Or does this rejection light a fire under Roman that we haven't seen in years? Here's the thing about Roman Reigns that casual fans sometimes forget. He's at his absolute best when someone tells him he can't do something. When he has something to prove, when he's been challenged, when someone's questioned his dominance, that's when the tribal chief becomes truly dangerous. Nick Aldis might have accidentally created an even more motivated version of Roman Reigns. Instead of coasting into War Games with a hand-picked team of loyal soldiers, Roman now has to prove that he can win with whoever gets selected based on merit. That kind of challenge could bring out a level of intensity we haven't seen from him in quite some time. The SmackDown locker room has to be absolutely buzzing right now. Every wrestler who's been grinding week after week, putting in the work but getting overlooked because they don't have a Paul Heyman advocating for them, just got a renewed sense of hope. Every mid-card talent who's been waiting for their opportunity just realized that maybe hard work actually does get rewarded under Nick Aldis's leadership. On the other side, you'll have to believe the bloodline is seething. They've had everything their way for so long that this rejection probably feels like the ultimate disrespect. Solo Sikoa and whoever else is rolling with Roman right now are looking at this situation and seeing their special counsel get shut down. That kind of embarrassment breeds anger, and anger leads to mistakes. The implications for War Games itself are enormous. Instead of a carefully orchestrated team built on loyalty and strategic planning, we might see a roster of hungry young talents who've earned their spots through recent victories. The unpredictability factor just increased dramatically. Will this team have the chemistry and cohesion that Heyman was trying to manufacture? Or will we see dysfunction and distrust because all this forced merit over politics? There's also the possibility that this merit-based approach actually creates a stronger team. What if the wrestlers who've proven themselves through recent wins are more motivated and determined than whoever Heyman would have selected based on loyalty? That would be the ultimate irony, wouldn't it? Heyman gets rejected, his master plan gets destroyed, and then the team assembled through Aldis's process ends up being more effective than anything the Wisemen could have orchestrated. Regardless of what happens at War Games, the damage to Paul Heyman's reputation has already been done. The Wiseman's entire value is based on his ability to navigate backstage politics, to get his clients the best possible positions, to manipulate situations in their favor. He's not a physical competitor who's going to interfere in matches. His power comes from his words, his connections, his ability to work the system. Nick Aldis just proved that system has limits, and more importantly, that Paul Heyman might not be quite as untouchable as everyone thought. You think Heyman's going to forget this? You think the Wiseman's going to let this slide and move on like nothing happened? Absolutely not. This is the beginning of what could be an incredible long-term storyline between these two masterminds. Heyman doesn't need to physically confront Aldis or challenge him to a match. What Heyman can do is far more insidious and devastating. He can undermine Aldis's authority in subtle ways. He can manipulate other superstars to create chaos on SmackDown. He can turn the locker room against their general manager through carefully placed whispers and insinuations. This isn't going to be resolved in one segment or even one show. This is a chess match that could play out over months, with every decision Aldis makes being scrutinized through the lens of this power struggle. Every move Heyman makes will be analyzed for hidden motives and long-term strategy. We're watching two of the smartest minds in professional wrestling engage in a war that's not fought with fists and kicks, but with strategy, manipulation, and political maneuvering. The timing of this whole situation adds another layer of intrigue. We're heading into Survivor Series, traditionally one of the biggest events on the wrestling calendar. War Games is the centerpiece, the main attraction that everyone has been anticipating for weeks. For this kind of backstage drama to explode right now, mere weeks before the event, adds layers of unpredictability that we rarely get in modern wrestling where so much is telegraphed months in advance. What does Roman's team look like now? Who ends up in that cage representing the bloodline? More importantly, does the team have the chemistry that Heyman was trying to manufacture through his careful selection process? Or are we going to see dissension and dysfunction because Aldis forced merit over politics? Think about the parallels to real corporate politics for a moment. How many times have you seen a brilliant employee get shut down by management because they overstepped their authority? How many times have you witnessed the aftermath, the tension, the subtle warfare that happens in meetings and carefully worded statements? That's exactly what we're getting here, except it's in the heightened dramatic world of wrestling where the stakes are championship opportunities and War Games matches instead of corner offices and bonuses. This is compelling television that transcends the typical wrestling storyline because it taps into dynamics that everyone can understand and relate to. What's brilliant about this situation is how it elevates everyone involved. Nick Aldis looks stronger than ever as a legitimate authority figure who won't be pushed around by anyone, regardless of their history or connections. Paul Heyman remains the brilliant strategist, but now he's been challenged in a way that forces him to evolve and adapt. Roman Reigns gets positioned as a champion who might actually face some real adversity for the first time in years. The entire War Games match becomes more intriguing because we genuinely don't know how the teams will shake out. That uncertainty, that unpredictability, that's what makes wrestling compelling. When outcomes feel predetermined and politics trump performance, fans lose interest. When merit matters and anyone can earn their spot through hard work, that's when magic happens. The question moving forward is how this power struggle continues to develop. Does Heyman accept this defeat and focus his energy on preparing whatever team ends up getting selected? Or does he view this as a declaration of war, the beginning of a campaign to undermine, discredit, and ultimately remove Nick Aldis from his position as SmackDown general manager? Knowing Paul Heyman's history, knowing his vindictive nature when he feels wronged, knowing how he's operated throughout his entire career, the smart money is on the latter. This isn't over, not by a long shot. What we witnessed was the opening move in what could be one of the most compelling non-wrestling storylines in recent memory. For us as fans, this is exactly the kind of content that makes wrestling special. We're not just getting great matches, we're getting intricate storylines that mirror real-world power dynamics. We're getting characters with depth and motivation and long-term arcs that pay off over time. We're getting television where a conversation in an office can be just as gripping as a 30-minute cage match. This is why wrestling, when done right, is unlike any other form of entertainment. Where else do you get this perfect blend of athletic competition, dramatic storytelling, and political intrigue all wrapped into one package? The road to Wargames just became infinitely more interesting. Every decision Nick Aldis makes from this point forward will be viewed through the lens of his confrontation with Paul Heyman. Every move Heyman makes will be analyzed for signs of retaliation or long-term strategy. Every member of the bloodline will be watching to see how their leader responds to this unprecedented rejection. The entire SmackDown roster is paying attention because the rules of the game just changed. Merit matters now. Performance matters now. You can't just talk your way into opportunities anymore, you have to earn them in the ring. That's revolutionary in an era where backstage politics often seemed more important than actual wrestling ability. War Games is going to be absolutely insane, but the journey there might end up being even more compelling than the match itself. We're watching history unfold in real time, watching the power structure of an entire brand get challenged and redefined. Nick Aldis versus Paul Heyman isn't just a personality conflict, it's a clash of philosophies about how wrestling should operate. Should the most politically savvy people get to dictate terms and handpick scenarios that favor their clients? Or should merit and recent performance determine who gets opportunities? Aldis has clearly chosen the latter, and that decision is going to have consequences that reverberate for months or even years to come. The beauty of this situation is that there's no clear right or wrong answer. You can understand Paul Heyman's perspective. He's trying to give his client, Roman Reigns, the best possible chance to succeed at War Games. That's literally his job as special counsel. From Heyman's point of view, he was being a good advocate, doing what any manager should do for their talent. But you can also understand Nick Aldis's position. As general manager, he has a responsibility to maintain fairness and competitive integrity. If he allows Heyman to handpick teams and influence matchmaking to that degree, what message does that send to the rest of the roster? Why should anyone bother working hard if opportunities are just going to be handed out based on who has the best representation? This is the kind of nuanced storytelling that elevates wrestling from simple good guy versus bad guy narratives into something far more sophisticated. Both men have legitimate points. Both men are acting rationally based on their positions and motivations. The conflict arises not because one person is right and the other is wrong, but because their interests and responsibilities are fundamentally opposed. That's compelling drama. That's the kind of storytelling that keeps fans engaged week after week, debating and discussing and theorizing about what happens next. As we move closer to Survivor Series, every segment involving Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, or Nick Aldis is going to carry extra weight. Every promo will be analyzed for subtle shots or hidden meanings. Every backstage interaction will be scrutinized for signs of the continuing power struggle. The wrestling world loves nothing more than a good backstage story, and this one has all the elements of a classic. Pride, power, politics, and personal animosity all colliding in the pressure cooker environment of a major pay-per-view build-up. You couldn't script something better if you tried. The smartest thing about how this is being handled is that it doesn't require any immediate resolution. This can simmer and build over time. War Games will happen, and regardless of the outcome, this tension between Aldis and Heyman can continue. If Roman's team wins, Heyman can claim vindication and argue that his approach would have made victory even easier. If they lose, he can blame Aldis for not listening to his strategy and costing the bloodline the match. Either way, the story continues, the animosity deepens, and we as fans get more compelling television. That's long-term storytelling done right, where one event feeds into the next and nothing exists in isolation. What's going to be fascinating to watch is how the other personalities on SmackDown react to this power shift. Do other managers and advocates start testing Nick Aldis to see if his merit-based approach applies universally or if Heyman just caught him on a bad day? Do opportunistic wrestlers try to play both sides, currying favor with Aldis while secretly working with Heyman? Does the locker room split into factions based on whether they support the traditional political approach or the new merit system? All of these possibilities exist, and any of them could spin off into their own compelling storylines. Professional wrestling at its best is about creating moments and storylines that people want to talk about. Water cooler moments. Social media trending topics. Debates that rage on internet forums for days. Paul Heyman getting shut down by Aldis is exactly that kind of moment. It's unexpected, it has real consequences, it involves characters that people care about, and it raises genuine questions about how things will proceed moving forward. That's the formula for successful wrestling storytelling, and we just witnessed it play out in real time. The Wargames match itself will be incredible regardless of how the teams shake out. These matches are always violent, intense spectacles that push everyone involved to their limits. But now there's an extra layer of intrigue. Now we're not just watching to see who wins, we're watching to see if Aldis's merit-based selection proves superior to Paul Heyman's political maneuvering. We're watching to see how Roman Reigns responds to not getting everything his way for possibly the first time in years. We're watching to see if this is truly the beginning of a new era on SmackDown where hard work and recent performance matter more than backstage connections. Those are the kinds of questions that make wrestling compelling beyond just the physical competition in the ring. Make sure you're following along with everything that happens from here because this story is far from over. Paul Heyman doesn't accept defeat gracefully, and Aldis has planted his flag as a general manager who won't be pushed around. The collision course has been set, and everyone on SmackDown is going to feel the impact. War Games is just the beginning. The real war, the one being fought in offices and hallways and through careful manipulation of circumstances, that war is going to define SmackDown for months to come. And we're going to be here breaking down every development, every twist, every brilliant move and countermove in this chess match between two of the smartest minds in the business. This is exactly why wrestling matters, why it captivates millions of fans worldwide, why it generates this level of passion and engagement. Because when it's done right, when the storytelling clicks and the characters resonate and the stakes feel real, there's nothing else quite like it. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, do it now so you don't miss a single moment of this unfolding drama, because what comes next is going to be absolutely unmissable.